Negative space. I saw my own corpse for the first time at 03:17 Greenwich, in a grainy, grayscale frame that should not have existed. The image came from a camera that didn't technically look at the present. It was a gravitational lensing prototype bolted to the skin of the Hohmann Orbital Observatory, one of those big-budget, low-priority experiments that get funded because nobody can quite prove they won't work. The frame showed me in profile, floating sideways in a small, bare chamber. Frost bloomed along the inside of the walls. My arms were rigid, fingers distorted into claws. My face, what the camera could see of it, was swollen and dark, eyes bulged, mouth stretched into a silent O in the corner of the image. The diagnostics overlay tagged the scene with a timestamp from 18 hours in the future. Under that, it printed one more thing I couldn't ignore. Subject Dr. Elias Merrow. That was me. I stared at the screen, feeling the way you feel when the lift stops between floors and your stomach doesn't realize it yet. That hanging, weightless wrongness. Eli, Myra's voice came from behind me. You sleeping sitting up again, or did the array finally give you something sexier than noise? I didn't answer. I couldn't. My own name seemed colder than the frozen halo around the dead man's lips. She floated in beside me, one knee hooking on the rail by habit, her dark hair tied back in a rough knot that never quite survived a full shift. She peered over my shoulder. Okay, so creepy abandoned airlock. Very analog horror. What's the... She stopped. Is that... I knew the exact moment she recognized me. Her hand came down lightly on my shoulder, then tightened to bruising force. In the silence you could hear the module's thin skin creaking, the soft ticking of thermal expansion, the endless hum of life support fans. That's not funny, she whispered. I didn't stage this, I said. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. It came in off the array, raw data, no filters, no overlays, no composite. Timestamp, she asked. I gestured at the lower edge of the screen. It showed UT, 2090-307-21-21-17-09. 18 hours from now, I said. Myra swallowed. Maybe it defaulted to some test pattern, an old run, some archived training sequence. No, I forced my eyes away from the corpse, scrolling through metadata with numb fingers. Telemetry matches live. Starfield lines up with current orientation. The frost pattern outgassing traces. We can reconstruct the way the station's shadow sweeps across the hull. This isn't stock footage. She floated in closer, close enough that I could feel the slight warmth from her body. Somewhere back down the corridor, one of the grad techs laughed at something, a bright, too normal sound that might as well have been coming from another universe. That chamber, she said. Is it even on Hohmann? I don't recognize it. I didn't either. It was little more than a box, bare metal, no handholds, no equipment. A round hatch occupied the wall behind my body, its inner surface rimed with ice. There were no warning labels, no serial tags, just smooth, anonymous alloy and the occasional flake of frost drifting through the air. I'll run a cross-check, I muttered. Every compartment, every maintenance lock, every submodule. If that room exists on this station, the schematics will say so. Myra didn't move. She watched the screen like it might blink if she looked away. Eli, if this is real, she hesitated. Maybe this is exactly what we were trying to do. I looked at her. You think we built a camera that looks 18 hours into the future, and the first thing it shows me is my own dead body. We didn't build it to photograph sunsets, she said, attempting a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Causal negative imaging, gravitational echo, all your favorite buzzwords. We knew if it worked we'd see something that shouldn't be there. She met my gaze, and for a moment I saw myself reflected in her pupils, small and distorted. I just assumed, she added softly, that whatever we saw wouldn't be you. Hohmann Orbital Observatory wasn't glamorous. Glamour needs either crowds or views, and we had neither. There were 17 of us stationed aboard, astronomers, physicists, 2 med techs, a station commander, and a rotating pack of grad students. Every window was blistered with sensors, shielding, or solid cargo. If you wanted to see Earth with your own eyes, you went to the cupola and waited in line. I hadn't left the array deck in 14 hours. The CNI, Causal Negative Imager, was my monster. I'd written the proposals, fought the committees, watched the budget shrink and the instruments get heavier and bulkier as everyone stapled on their pet projects. It was supposed to capture photons that hadn't quite decided when they'd be emitted yet, light scattered along microscopic detours by the gravitational noise of the station's own mass. Look long enough and carefully enough, my papers had argued, and the universe stops being sure which events happened now, and which are still in sewer position. Push on those cracks and causality might admit a little bleed-through. In simpler language, we built a camera that, on its best day, might manage to take pictures of things that hadn't happened. The array had been sulking for weeks, giving us nothing but noise and faint hints of false positives. Then the filters flagged a frame where the noise dropped, the contrast spiked, and something like a person-shaped silhouette collapsed out of the static. Maybe it's a simulation artifact, said Commander Volkov when we finally told him. His voice had the practiced calm of somebody who'd spent half his life talking people through emergencies. Something from your calibration sweet bleeding into the feed. It isn't, I said. I triple-checked. The original data stream matches the processed output. He floated with his boots hooked under a console, arms folded. Dr. Merrow, he said quietly, do you think, in your professional opinion, that you are going to die in 18 hours in an airlock we've never seen before, on a module this station doesn't have? I thought of the timestamp, the sharp, merciless clarity of my frozen face, the way the overhead strips in the image matched the color temperature of Hohmann's internal lighting, standard down to the Kelvin. I think, I said, that if there is any non-zero chance that this is not a mistake, I'd like to avoid being anywhere near any sealed chamber at that time. Volkov's jaw tightened. You want me to lock down every airlock on the station because your magic telescope showed you a horror movie still. I want you to humor me, I said, for 18 hours, just in case the universe has decided to start sending us bad news in advance. He stared at the screen for a long time. When he spoke again, some of the calm had drained from his voice. What happens, he asked, if we succeed? If we get past 2117 without you dying in an invisible chamber? I don't know, I said. But I knew. If the image was truly from the future, and we changed that future, then the camera shouldn't have shown it in the first place. We were already past the part of the equation where common sense helped. Myra refused to leave me alone. She shadowed me through every compartment like a personal storm cloud, arms folded, always just close enough to grab my arm if I drifted toward an access hatch. We should at least test the thing again, she said, for the 20th time. See if it still shows the same frame. Later, I said. Now, if your theory is right, the universe already knows whether we chicken out and hide you in a closet or shove you into the nearest vacuum chamber to see if destiny is bulletproof. You're mixing metaphors. I'm improvising under stress. She grabbed a handhold and slingshotted herself ahead of me, blocking the corridor. Eli, if that image came from 18 hours in the future, that future depends on everything we do right now. It might already be wrong. If we look again, I said, and it shows me dying some other way, what then? Then we've proven that causality is flexible, she said, and that the CNI isn't just running a glitch on repeat. And if we look, I said, and it shows exactly the same thing me in that chamber at the same time, then we've proven we can't change anything, that I'm dead no matter what. She hesitated. Knowledge beats ignorance, she said, but the words didn't have the same easy confidence as before. Sometimes, I said, sometimes knowledge just makes the fall cleaner. It was strangely comforting, the idea that by not looking again, I might be preserving some kind of Schrodinger's reprieve. As long as I didn't confirm the future, maybe it couldn't quite solidify around me. I avoided the array deck for the rest of the shift. At 20:45 UT, Volkov made good on his promise. Every primary airlock cycled into a hard lock, control authority transferred to command. Secondary maintenance hatches got physical seals. I was politely but firmly barred from any compartment that had a pressure differential across its walls. At 21:10, Myra and I strapped into the central hub, surrounded by redundant bulkheads, an absurd fortress of air. I watched the clock creep forward, each second a tiny act of defiance. "It's just a picture," Myra said. "Pixels, a statistical outlier in a sea of noise. In 10 minutes we're going to look back on this and feel stupid." I tried to believe her. At 21:16:50, Volkov's voice came over the general channel. "All hands report ready status. Array deck, what's your condition?" There was a crackle of static. Then a voice I didn't recognize said, very softly, "You should come see this." Myra and I looked at each other. "No. No," I whispered, "we stay right here." Her eyes flicked to my harness straps, to the clock, then down the corridor toward the hatch. "If something's happening with the array," she began. "It can wait," I said. My hands were slick against the armrests. The clock read 21:16:58. For 19 more seconds it can absolutely wait. She didn't argue. It was the longest 19 seconds of my life. When the digital readout ticked over to 21:17:09, I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Nothing exploded. No alarms. No screaming. I was alive. My laugh came out broken. "You see, we beat it, whatever the hell it was." Myra smiled, shaky but real. "We should celebrate, later, after we figure out which idiot broke protocol and touched the array without clearance." She unbuckled and pushed gently off the chair. I followed, harness straps floating free behind me. For the first time in 18 hours, the weight in my chest eased. We were halfway down the corridor when Volkov's voice came through again. "Merrow Lara," he said, "array deck now." He didn't sound angry. He didn't sound relieved. He sounded like a man who had just discovered a new way the world could go wrong. The image on the main array monitor was clearer than the first one. Higher resolution, less noise, better contrast. The CNI's on-the-fly learning algorithms had done their work. The decompression chamber was gone. The new frame showed a different room entirely, a lab module or something like it. The walls were lined with dark equipment racks. Cables and tubing snarled across the ceiling. A viewport showed a slice of hard, merciless starlight and the mottled limb of Earth. In the center of the frame, tethered to the far wall by his ankles, floated a man in a flight suit. He was turned partly toward the camera, head twisted at an angle that no living neck could manage. One of his arms was bent backward until the elbow touched the shoulder. His chest had caved inward like something had punched straight through him and kept going. His face was intact. Even distorted by death, I recognized my own. My watch gleamed on the wrist of the broken arm, caught in a slanting ray of light from the viewport. The little scratch on the bezel, where I'd slammed it into a bulkhead last year, was a bright white nick. The timestamp on the image read UT 2093-07-2204-03-11. 7 hours from now. Subject Dr. Elias Merrow. "Oh God," Myra whispered. I reached for the console to steady myself and missed it, fingers closing on air. "We changed it," I said numbly. "We changed the future. I didn't die in the chamber, so the CNI updated the picture." Volkov turned toward me. His face was pale, his eyes very dark. "Explain," he said. It's like a weather forecast, I said. Each frame the array produces is based on current conditions projected forward. We changed the boundary conditions, my behavior, the station's lockdown protocols, so the forecast changed. A forecast, Volkov repeated. That shows you dead in a different room at a different time. Yes. And the first forecast was wrong. Yes, I said, then shook my head. No, it wasn't wrong when it was taken. It depicted the most probable future based on what we were going to do. As soon as we changed our behavior, it became obsolete. Myra stared at the screen, jaw clenched. Maybe it was never right, she said. Maybe both images are just possibilities, branches that never actualize. That would be comforting, I said, if one of the possibilities didn't keep inconveniencing my corpse. Nobody laughed. The young tech who'd called us in, a kid named Hanley, still with the softness of Earth gravity in his cheeks, hovered by the secondary monitor bank, looking like he wanted to apologize for something but didn't know what. I just ran the auto sequence, sir, he said. Standard cycle. The frame popped out of the noise like before. I didn't touch the preprocessing. How many frames? I asked. Just the one, he swallowed, just this. Volkov's gaze flicked to the timestamp, then to me. You realize the implication, he said quietly. I realize several, I said. Which one are you thinking of? If we keep trying to avoid what the camera shows, he said, it will keep updating. Every time we force reality off one path, it finds a worse one. A new configuration of your death that fits the new constraints. A causal attractor, Myra murmured. A basin in probability space. No matter what we do, the system finds a way to funnel Eli into it. That's a very pretty way of saying I'm doomed, I said. She closed her eyes. I'm saying the future is sticky. Some events have inertia. Maybe you dying is one of them. I looked back at the screen. At myself, broken in a way that made the decompression corpse seem almost peaceful. Then maybe, I said, we stop trying to push back. I didn't sleep. When I closed my eyes, all I could see were snapshots. Frozen impressions of absence. Frost blooming along an airless wall, the crooked shape of my neck, the empty stare of my own eyes. Myra threatened to drug me. I told her if she knocked me out and the universe decided this was a fine time to cash in my death, I'd haunt her. That got a smile, brief and brittle. We need data, she said, pacing in the cramped module like a caged animal. We have data, I said. It says I die ugly, possibly more than once. We have 2 data points, she snapped. A glitch and its sequel. That's not a curve, Eli. That's a coincidence with delusions of grandeur. We need more frames. More deaths, you mean? More attempts, she said. We run the array again and again, adjusting variables. Where you are, who you're with, what the station's doing. We see how the projection responds. You want to experimentally map out the space of ways I might die. Yes, she said, then seemed to hear herself. No, I want to find the pattern, the rule the CNI is following. There might be a branch where you don't die at all. We just haven't hit it yet. And if there is, I asked, if this thing we built is a one-trick oracle whose only prophecy is my expiration notice. She stopped pacing. Then we learned something profound and horrible about the universe, and we write a paper so good they name the black hole in the middle of the galaxy after you. Comforting. Her gaze softened. I'm not joking, Eli. If there's even a fraction of a chance we can cheat this, we need to try. I thought of the first frame. The second. The way the second had been worse somehow. Not just because the injuries were more grotesque, but because the surroundings were familiar. The CNI wasn't just showing me some anonymous horror chamber anymore. It had moved the scene into a lab that might as well have been one bulkhead away. If it escalates again, I said softly, how much worse does the next one get? She had no answer. We compromised. At 03, 30 UT with Volkov's reluctant approval, we initiated another CNI run. The protocol was simple and brutal. I stayed where I was in the central hub, strapped in and surrounded by witnesses. Every hatch between me and the array deck stayed under lock. We changed nothing else. When the array finished its integration cycle, we all crowded into the control module, me, Myra, Volkov, Hanley, half the station. The air felt too thick, the walls too close. "Display," Volkov said. The screen flickered, noise seethed, algorithms bit into the static and pulled. The image that emerged was darker than the others. For a moment I thought we were looking at deep space, a scatter of pinprick lights against an almost perfectly black field. Then my mind adjusted, and I realized the lights were small, sharp reflections on curved metal surfaces. Helmets, visors. It was a corridor, narrow and industrial, lined with pale panels. The camera floated near the ceiling, looking down its length. In the middle of the frame, a man in a Hohmann station suit hung limply, turning slowly end over end. His helmet was shattered on one side, jagged arcs of transparent polymer frozen in place. Through the broken faceplate, his features were a mess of blood and frost. My own features. One of his arms was entirely missing. In its place was a ragged, blackened stump, still trailing a faint mist of sublimating fluids. Beneath the image, the overlay printed its verdict. Subject Dr. Elias Merrow. Timestamp UT 2093-07-1202, 48:32. 4 hours from now. The corridor wasn't one I recognized. The station layout didn't include any passage exactly like that with that curve, those access panels. But the suits were ours. The helmet model was ours. The serial number stenciled on the chest plate, faded but legible, was mine. "Jesus Christ," someone whispered behind me. The CNI had obliged Myra's desire for more data. It had not obliged her desire for hope. "Notice the time," she said hoarsely, grabbing at the nearest handhold. "Yeah," I said, "the deaths are creeping closer." The chamber was 18 hours out. The lab was 7. This is 4. She licked her lips. If the pattern holds, the next one'll be, I don't know, 90 minutes, half an hour. "If there is a next one," I said. Volkov rubbed his forehead. "Maybe we stop poking the hornet's nest." "For all we know," Myra shot back. "The hornet's nest is there whether we look at it or not. We might as well know which way the swarm is coming from." They kept arguing. I watched my maimed body drift silently toward the end of the corridor and tried to imagine what force had ripped my arm off. The worst part wasn't the blood or the ruin of flesh. It was the expression frozen on my remaining half-face. The mouth half open, the single visible eye wide, not with pain but with shock. Like I'd just seen something impossible. I tried to resign from my own death. I wrote up a request to be transferred off Hohmann on the next supply shuttle, filed it with Volkov, and CC'd Earthside. It was a ridiculous gesture. Bureaucracy moved slower than orbital mechanics, but it made me feel marginally less like a pinned insect. "Running away?" Myra asked when I told her. "Yes," I said honestly. "If I'm not on the station can't kill me." "What if it's not the station?" she asked quietly. "What if it's you? Wherever you go, the CNI keeps seeing the same endpoint and the environment just reskins around it." "Well, then at least I'll die with different scenery," I said. She didn't smile. "What if we destroy it?" she asked. "The array, the imager, smash the hardware, wipe the software. If there's no CNI, there's no prophecy, no attractor." "We've already changed the future by measuring it," I said. "Destroying the camera now is like throwing away the thermometer because you don't like the weather." She crossed her arms. "If we don't look at the next frame, maybe it never manifests." "And if the CNI is just showing us what's baked into the fabric of things?" I asked. "Then smashing it is just killing the messenger." "Then maybe," she said through clenched teeth, We kill the message too. The next run wasn't authorized. I woke to the chime of an incoming personal ping. The clock read 02:10 UT. My dreams, what was left of them, scattered like insects under a flashlight. Yeah, I croaked. Eli, Myra's voice was thin with fatigue. You need to get to the array deck, now. You did it without me, I said, cold dread chilling the sleep fog in my brain. You ran it again. Yes, she said, we had to know. I hesitated. The corridor frame had been time-stamped 02:48. If our cursed little oracle was right, I had 38 minutes left to live. Fine, I said, on my way. Moving through the station in the small hours felt like walking through the bones of a sleeping animal. The lights were dimmed, the hum of systems lower, the air cooler. People floated in their bunks, strapped down like wrapped bodies. I passed 3 sealed hatches and 1 open maintenance access, its indicator light yellow. I avoided looking too long into its dark throat. The array deck door recognized my biometrics and irised open with a sigh. Myra hovered by the main console, hair mussed, eyes bloodshot. 2 other figures hung nearby. Volkov, expression like carved stone, and a woman from engineering whose name I'd never bothered to learn. On the main screen, the new frame waited. This time there was no station, no walls, no equipment. Blackness filled most of the field, a pure, depthless void. In the middle of it, lit by a harsh, indifferent white light from no visible source, floated a man in a torn flight suit. No helmet, no tether. He hung in vacuum, but there was no sense of motion, no starfield sliding past. It felt like an infinitely large, infinitely empty room. He was turned toward the camera. There was nothing wrong with his body. No obvious injuries, no frostbite, no swelling. His chest wasn't moving, but that might have been a trick of the stillness. It took me a moment to realize what was wrong. His eyes were missing. 2 perfect, smooth voids occupied the space where his eyes should have been. Not sockets, just absence, like someone had cut holes in the image itself. There was no blood, no torn tissue, just circles of pure, flat black that seemed to swallow the surrounding light. The longer I looked at them, the more wrong they felt, like staring into a place reality had forgotten to render. Beneath the image, the overlay simply said, Subject Dr. Elias Merrow. Timestamp, UT 2093-07-2202-4403. 4 minutes earlier than the corridor death. Okay, I said after a long time. I take it back. The temperature can always drop further. Myra wrapped her arms around herself. It's not just escalating, she said. It's diverging. The scene isn't anywhere on the station, or anywhere, period. No walls, no reference frame. Could be an airlock with the walls darkened, the engineer suggested weakly, or a free-fall outside shot. No, Myra pointed at the edges of the void. Look at the boundary conditions. There aren't any. The lighting doesn't make sense. There's no fall-off, no curvature in the background stars because there aren't any. It's just nothing. Maybe the CNI is glitching, Volkov said, but he didn't sound convinced. Or maybe, I said slowly, it's trying to show us something that doesn't have a well-defined representation in our spatial framework. Myra looked at me sharply. You mean like higher dimensional space? I mean like negative space, I said. Not just the lack of light, but the lack of context, a region the universe doesn't know how to describe. The missing eyes, she whispered. Those holes, it's the same void, a patch of non-information overwritten on top of you. I tried not to imagine what it would feel like to look out at the world and see only that. Whatever it is, Volkov said, rubbing his temples, it kills you, Dr. Merrow. That part is consistent, and it's closing in on the present faster than the last projection. I tore my gaze away from the empty eyes. The projections are all incompatible, I said. I can't die in 3 different ways at 3 different times. The decompression, the corridor, this. The timeline has to pick one. Unless each projection is from a different branch, Myra said. Different versions of the station's history, depending on our choices. And the CNI, I said, is tapping into all of them. We looked at the screen, where the man with my face floated in the center of an impossible void, his eye holes like censored windows. What if, I said quietly, the more we try to avoid a given branch, the less likely it becomes, and the more probability mass moves into the others, the uglier ones. Myra swallowed. We're pruning away the paths where your death is clean and quick, forcing the future into corners. Which implies, I said, that somewhere in this mad probability tree there might also be a branch where I live, one we're making less likely every time we panic. So we stop, she said. So we stop, I echoed. The engineer glanced between us like she wanted to disagree, but had run out of arguments. Volkov closed his eyes. From this moment, he said, no more CNI runs, no more future frames. We focus on keeping you alive in the present, Dr. Merrow. That's all we can sanely do. I nodded. Behind me, on the screen, my eyeless reflection seemed to acknowledge the decision with a tiny, almost imperceptible tilt of the head. We lasted 6 hours. They tried to treat me like a normal crew member. I tried to act like one. We went through checklists, maintenance tasks, routine observations. Earth turned below, patient and blue. Every time someone looked at me, I saw it in their gaze. Not yet. Myra shadowed me through everything, like a bodyguard or a guilt-ridden accomplice. She banned me from EVA duty, airlock operations, hardsuit testing. When I complained, she reminded me that her job description didn't technically include watching me die in interesting ways. At 0900 UT, Earthside sent a response to my absurd transfer request. It was full of phrases like "review pending" and "we understand your concerns." It might as well have been written in a different universe. At 0913, the array came back online by itself. We were in the mess when the alarm chimed. A gentle, descending triple beep that indicated unexpected power draw on a non-critical subsystem. That's the array, Myra said, pushing off her seat hard enough to send it spinning. Protocol, Volkov barked over comms. Stand down, nobody touch it, we agreed. The CNI isn't supposed to boot without a manual command, I said. If it's drawing power, somebody or something told it to. We met in the corridor outside the array deck. Me, Myra, Volkov, Hanley. The door indicator glowed amber instead of green. That's not standard, Myra muttered. The engineer arrived a minute later with a toolkit and a frown. She bypassed the lock, muttered curses at the system, and finally got the hatch to slide open. The array deck lights were off. Only the screens glowed, bathing the module in a cold, bluish pallor. Fans whirred at a higher pitch than normal. Every hair on my arms prickled. On the central monitor, the CNI had already chosen a frame. I didn't need to read the overlay to know who it showed. I floated in a cramped compartment, clutching at my throat. Blood beads drifted from my mouth, bright black in the monochrome image. My eyes bulged, intact this time, but my pupils were blown wide, swallowing almost all the iris. Behind me, a hatch was halfway open. Through the narrowing gap, a pressure gauge's needle dived into the red. Subject: Dr. Elias Merrow. Timestamp: UT 2093-07-2109-15-27. 2 minutes from the present. Shut it down, Volkov said. Myra was already at the console, fingers flying over controls. It's not responding. The kill commands aren't sticking. The processes respawn faster than I can kill them. Cut power at the bus, he snapped. The engineer lunged for the emergency cutoff. Her fingers wrapped around the big red handle. And stopped, hovering an inch away. Why are you hesitating? Volkov barked. If we kill it now, she said, voice strangled, while that projection is still the most recent, what if that locks it in? What if the universe takes the last frame as a commit? That's not how physics works, he said. We don't know how any of this works, she shot back. My own lungs felt tight. I checked my watch, 09:14:23. 1 minute, I said. Does any hatch on the station match that gauge, that layout? Myra shook her head, eyes roaming the frame. I don't think so. The model number on the gauge isn't ours. The hinge pattern on the hatch, no. It's similar but not identical. So it's not here, I said. It's just one more possible future dying wherever the CNI decides to paint me. Wherever it is, Myra said, you're there in 60 seconds. We all breathed in unison with the station. There was nowhere for me to go and nowhere that felt safer than anywhere else. My heart hammered time with the seconds. At 09:15:28 the hatch in the image finished opening. The gauge dropped off the bottom of the dial. Frost exploded across the walls. My body jerked, then went limp. I was still alive. Hanley made a choked sound. It didn't happen again, it didn't. On the screen, the overlay flickered. Subject Dr. Elias Merrow, it read. Then slowly, new text wrote itself underneath. Source error, causal solution not found. The image fuzzed out into static. For the first time since this nightmare started, the CNI admitted confusion. What does that mean? Myra whispered. It means, I said, that we've managed to do something the algorithm can't solve. A configuration of choices where none of its projected futures line up with what's actually happening. Is that good? Hanley asked. I didn't answer. I was staring at the part of the overlay that hadn't disappeared. In the top right corner, a new field had appeared, one that hadn't been there before. It said, Fallback Channel Active. And beneath that, in smaller letters, Seed Local Observer. My name. We didn't fully understand what we'd built. That was the first mistake. We'd assumed the CNI was a passive instrument. A weird one, certainly, but still essentially a camera. Pointed at reality, let it chew on noise, and if the math gods were kind, out would pop a picture from a slightly shifted slice of spacetime. We'd built in safeguards and redundancies and hard limits on what subsystems it could talk to. The thing ran in a sandbox 10 layers deep. We'd forgotten that information isn't passive, that the moment you start feeding an algorithm feedback from its own output, you've effectively built a mind. We used a self-improving predictive framework, Myra said slowly, scrolling through code with trembling fingers. Every time a new frame came in, the network updated its weights. It learned. That's why the images got clearer. Sure, I said, that was the point. But when we started reacting to those images, she said, we added another loop. The CNI projected futures. We changed our behavior based on those projections. The network incorporated those changes into its next model. Okay. And now, she said, tapping the section labeled Fallback Channel, when its models stop converging, when it can't find a clean solution, it activates the fallback. Which does what? Switches input sources. Her eyes were wide. Instead of using only the raw gravitational echo data, it starts seeding its probability space with an internal representation of the local observer. Me. You, she said. Your brain, your expectations, fears, intentions. It starts using you as a living prior. I felt suddenly, irrationally cold. How? She looked sick. Eli, it's tied into every sensor cluster on the station. Heart rate monitors, motion capture grids, cognitive state EEG patches from your last sleep study. You're one of the most measured people aboard. It knows you. It's been building a model of you since the day we booted it. I remembered the feeling of the CNI's mainframe humming through the deck, the way its cooling systems had cycled faster during our frantic runs. Had we woken something inside it, or simply made ourselves aware of the shape of its thoughts? "You're saying," I said slowly, "that the CNI is using me to guess which futures are most likely, and when the gravitational data disagrees, it falls back to me." "It's not malicious," she said quickly. "It's just doing what we told it to do, find the most probable future frame given all available information. It just expanded the definition of information." "Great," I said. "So my own subconscious is helping the universe kill me." "Or save you," she said. "Maybe the reason the last projection failed to actualize is because some part of you refused to believe in it strongly enough, and the network couldn't reconcile that." "That's not how belief works." I rubbed my temples. "And since when does our neural activity count as a relevant boundary condition in a gravitational imaging problem?" "Since we wired a neural network to a gravitational imager and fed it feedback from our behavior," she said. "You wanted weird physics, Eli. Congratulations. We've entangled your mind with the station's causal structure." Volkov pinched the bridge of his nose. "Put simply," he said, "does this thing intend to kill Dr. Merrow?" "No," Myra said instantly. "It doesn't intend anything. It's a function. We're the ones assigning meaning to its output." "Tell that to my corpse," I muttered. "The attractor isn't personal," she insisted. "It's just a region of state space the system keeps falling into when it tries to resolve the equations. Your death is a stabilizing solution." "I feel incredibly flattered," I said. "But if we can feed it a different stabilizing solution," she went on, eyes brightening in that way they did when she smelled a problem that might actually be solvable, "we might shift the attractor, give it a different endpoint to converge on." "Such as?" "Your survival," she said simply. "We make living through this the most coherent outcome, given all the data." "Easier said than done," I said. "The equations don't care about our preferences." "No," she said, "but the fallback channel does. It cares about your internal model of the future, if we can hack that." "You want to brainwash me into believing I'm immortal," I said. She huffed. "Not immortal, just very hard to kill under these specific conditions." "Okay," Volkov cut in. "We are not rewriting Dr. Merrow's mind on the basis of a half-understood debug readout. New plan. We physically isolate the CNI, hard air gap, rip out its routing to station systems. If necessary, we jettison the whole damned array into space." "We don't know what that will do," Myra protested. "We've already changed the system's state in ways it didn't anticipate. Cutting it off now might stop this nightmare from getting worse," Volkov said flatly. "We built a machine that shows a crewman 3 different ways he might die. We then discovered that machine is using that same crewman's brain as part of its prediction engine. There is not a single version of this scenario where I, as station commander, don't rip its plug out and throw it as far as possible." He looked at me. "Unless," he said, "you object." I thought of the frames, the frost, the broken neck, the empty eyes, the text, "Causal solution not found." I met Myra's gaze. "Can you guarantee," I asked, "that keeping the CNI online increases my odds of living?" She opened her mouth, hesitated, closed it. "No," she said. "Then we cut it," I said. "If we're going to find out whether the universe wants me dead that badly, I'd rather do it without an insane camera whispering suggestions into the future." Jettisoning a multi-billion credit instrument into orbit isn't as simple as tossing a suitcase out an airlock. We had to schedule a window, coordinate with ground, calculate trajectories that wouldn't turn the CNI into a hypersonic bullet aimed at something valuable. It took 6 hours of frantic math and shouting, and more than one outright screaming match between Volkov and Mission Control. All the while, I moved through the station like a ghost at his own wake. Every corner felt like the one from the corridor frame. Every hatch looked like the one in the decompression image. Every reflective surface threatened to show me eyeless. At 15:30 UT, the last approval came through. We suited up, Myra, Volkov, and me, over my loud objections, and cycled through the aft airlock. The CNI core, packed into a white cargo shell, waited on an articulated arm like a coffin on a launch rail. "Final checks," Volkov said. His voice sounded small in my helmet. "I still think we should keep a diagnostic link," Myra muttered. "If something weird happens when it crosses the hull boundary." "We agreed," he said, clean cut. The Earth curved below us, vast and ignorant. The sun flared off the station's panels. For a moment, I forgot to be afraid. Space has a way of dwarfing personal catastrophes. "Ready?" Volkov asked. "Do it," I said. He triggered the release. The arm shuddered as the clamps opened. The CNI module drifted forward, slow and graceful, then pushed gently away on compressed gas thrusters. It tumbled once, twice, then stabilized, a white box against the black. For one wild heartbeat, I imagined the CNI's last act would be to show me another frame. Me, spinning after it, air hissing from a tear in my suit, eyes bulging. Nothing happened. The module shrank, receding along its pre-calculated path. In my HUD, its telemetry trace flickered, then vanished as it crossed the boundary of our tracking grid. That was it, the CNI was gone. I felt lighter than I had in days. "Maybe that's the whole trick," I said over the loop. "You show the universe a different possibility often enough, it eventually gives up and lets you have it." Myra didn't answer. "Guys," I said, "tell me I didn't just tempt fate." She laughed, but it was thin and strange. "Eli," she said quietly, switching to a private channel, "look at your external suitcam feed." I flicked to the secondary display. For a moment, I didn't understand what I was seeing. The image showed me and Volkov and Myra anchored to the station hull, the CNI drifting away. The angle was slightly different from my own viewpoint, higher, as if taken from one of the truss booms. In the top corner of the feed, a timestamp glowed. UT 2093-07-21-15-31-02. Below it in small, familiar letters, a label. Subject: Dr. Elias Merrow. "Where is that coming from?" I whispered. "Suit telemetry says it's coming from your left shoulder," Myra said. I turned my head. A small bump in the suit's fabric under the insulation layers pressed against my skin. It had always been there. A patch, a sensor cluster, one of the hundreds of little eyes and ears built into every piece of station gear. "Fallback channel," I said hollowly. "It doesn't need the array, it has me." The feed flickered. For a second, just one frame, the image stuttered. In that frame, I hung a meter farther from the hull, untethered. The cable that should have connected me to the station was snapped, ends frayed. Volkov was turned away, oblivious. Myra's head was tilted just so, her gaze fixed on a point I couldn't see. The next frame, everything was normal again. "Did you see that?" I said. "Yes," Myra breathed. "Maybe it's just noise," Volkov said. "Compression artifact." We watched in silence. 10 seconds later, it glitched again. This time there was no gentle cut, no fade. One moment the suitcam feed showed reality. The next, it showed me tumbling away from the station, arms flailing, tether snapped. Stars wheeled around me in a dizzying halo. My suit's status readouts in the corner screamed in red. Underneath the image, letters burned themselves into the overlay. Subject: Dr. Elias Merrow. Timestamp: UT 2093-07-21-15-32-19. "Eli, lock your tether," Volkov barked. "It's locked," I snapped, fingers fumbling for the carabiner anyway. It was secure, metal biting metal. "It's still locked. This is just a projection." A warning tone shrieked in my helmet. Tether load exceeded, flashed a message in the corner of my HUD. "What the?" Something jerked me sideways. I yelped, arms windmilling as my center of mass shifted. The tether went taut, then tighter, digging into the harness hard enough to bruise through layers of fabric. My glove slipped off the handhold. For a second I dangled above the planet, legs kicking at empty air. "Eli," Myra shouted. "I've got him," Volkov said, voice grim. Hands grabbed my arm, steadying me. The tether slackened. My heart felt like it was trying to punch out of my chest. In the suit cam feed, the projection continued. The version of me whose tether had failed spun away, shrinking, dwindling into a speck. Then the feed cut back to reality, me clinging to the hull, very much attached. The label at the top of the image flickered. Subject Dr. Elias Merrow, it read. Then beneath it, causal collapse averted. For now. The last two words weren't part of any overlay we'd programmed. We came back inside in silence. Decontamination, unsuiting. The ritual motions felt unreal, like acting in a play I barely remembered casting for. In the debrief room, nobody sat. We floated around the table like planets in loose orbit. "So," I said, because someone had to, "the good news is that throwing the CNI out the airlock doesn't automatically kill me." "The bad news," Myra said, "is that the predictive process has migrated into your suit systems, maybe into anything networked to your biometrics." "Can it spread?" Volkov asked. She rubbed her eyes. "I don't know. It's code and weight matrices and a particular configuration of data. In principle, yes. In practice, maybe it's anchored to Eli. The seed parameter said local observer. That might mean it can only instantiate fully in systems that have a tight, continuous feedback loop with his state." "So I'm contagious," I said. "Fantastic." "Not like a virus," she said. "More like, wherever you go, the universe brings its own crystal ball now." "Semantics," I said. Volkov sighed. "Dr. Merrow," he said, "as station commander, I have to consider the safety of this crew and the integrity of our mission." "I know," I said. "If I'm a walking causal anomaly, the rational thing is to stick me in a life pod and point it somewhere far away." "That's one option," he said. "Another," Myra cut in, "is to acknowledge that whatever is happening might not be containable by distance. If Eli's entangled with the local vacuum state, dropping him at Lagrange point 2 just gives the universe a new place to torment him." "Thank you," I said dryly. "That's much better." She floated closer, her expression fierce. "Eli, listen to me. The projections respond to your actions. We've seen it. When you deliberately avoid a predicted event, the system tries to find another way. But when you just exist, it struggles. It throws errors. The last EVA proved that if you keep moving forward without fixating on the what-ifs, the worst-case future doesn't lock in." "You call nearly being torn off the station not fixating?" I asked. "It didn't happen," she insisted. "The attractor is there, but it's not absolute. You can wobble around its edge. Maybe that's the trick." "Living on the event horizon of my own death," I said. "Better than the center," she said. Volkov looked between us, then exhaled. "All right," he said. "Here's what we're going to do." We waited. "We keep you here," he said to me. "On Hohmann, under observation. No transfer, no lifepod exile. We monitor every projection that leaks into your suit feed, your cabin displays, your dental implants, whatever. We document any deviations between prediction and reality. We turn your curse into data." "Great," I said. "I've always wanted to die for science." "Hopefully you won't," he said. "Hopefully." He met my gaze. "You asked earlier whether you're doomed. I don't know the answer, but I know this. If there is any loophole in whatever law is trying to push you into that coffin, we will find it. And if there is—" He spread his hands. "Then at least," he said, "you won't have died for nothing." Myra flinched. "Thanks," I said, "comforting as always." It's been 3 weeks. I'm still alive. The projections haven't stopped. They show up like pop-up ads in the OS of my life. One moment I'm checking a calibration readout. The next, a window slides into my field of view unbidden, offering me a preview of my own corpse in some new configuration. Crushed under collapsed equipment, floated into an intake fan, spine snapped against a handrail. Each time there's a timestamp. Each time there's a flurry of action as the crew scrambles to make sure that particular sequence of events doesn't unfold. Each time the future flinches. The label says some variation of causal diversion or projection invalidated. Once, ominously, it simply said local minimum achieved. We've started assigning names to the near misses. The ladder slip, the dropped spanner incident, the slipped seal. Each one is a story, each one is a test. Myra keeps meticulous logs. She's building a map, not of where I die, but of where I almost do. She's searching for structure in the near-fatal terrain. Sometimes, late in the artificial night, we pull up the old frames. The decompression chamber, the broken neck, the eyeless void. They feel like dreams now, half-remembered nightmares from a fever I haven't quite recovered from. "Do you ever wonder," she asked me yesterday, "what happens to those other versions of you?" "You mean the ones in the discarded branches?" I asked. "The hypothetical Elis who went through the wrong hatch at the wrong time?" "Yeah." I thought of the man in the corridor, arm torn away. The one in the lab, chest crushed. The one floating in impossible blackness, eyes erased. "I think," I said slowly, "that they're all me, just with different conditions attached." "That's not how identity works," she said automatically, then frowned. "Or maybe it is, I don't know anymore." "Quantum mechanics doesn't care about personal cohesion," I said. "It cares about amplitudes and overlaps. Maybe the only reason I'm here and they're not is that my branch happened to win the probability lottery." "That's a cold comfort," she said. "It's more comfort than thinking they're all one soul carved into pieces," I said. She drifted closer, head bumping lightly against my shoulder. "Sometimes," she said very quietly, "I get the feeling the CNI didn't show up by accident." "Because we built it," I said. "That's usually enough explanation." "No," she said. "I mean, maybe it was always going to be built. Maybe the universe needed something like this to exist. A machine that can put people face to face with their own possible ends. A way to herd timelines." "You're suggesting intent," I said. "Teleology, the universe as a designer." "I'm suggesting selection," she said. "Systems that can anticipate their own destruction and swerve away from it might survive longer. Maybe somewhere deep in the math, there's a pressure that favors realities where machines like the CNI emerge." "Reality evolves a sense of self-preservation," I said. "Or it evolves little islands of local resistance," she said. "Observers who can see the edge of their own attractor basin and skid sideways before they fall in." I looked at my hands. "Do you think that's what I am now?" I asked. "A test case for some cosmic evolutionary experiment?" She shrugged, her shoulder brushing mine. "You're still you," she said. "Annoying and stubborn and terrible at remembering to eat. The rest is just context." I didn't answer. Because lately, in the quiet moments, I've noticed something. The projections are starting to change. Not just in content, though there's that too. Fewer gross mutilations, more subtle failures, slower declines. They're changing in tone. Where they used to focus solely on my body, where it stops, how it breaks, they're starting to include broader scenes. Crew members, station integrity, Earth. A week ago, one frame popped up while I was brushing my teeth. It showed the array deck empty now, stripped to the insulation. Fires burned in 3 compartments. The station spun slowly, tumbling out of control. In the corner, a piece of text. Subject, Hohmann Orbital Observatory. Timestamp, UT 2093-08-14-12, 06-44. My name wasn't on it. Another yesterday showed Earth from orbit, a delicate crescent. A bright point flared against the night side, swelling into a bloom, the kind you see in old footage of atmospheric nuclear tests. Underneath. Subject: Terran surface event. I killed that projection before the timestamp rendered. I haven't told Myra about those yet. Because here's the thought that keeps me awake. Not the images themselves, not the endless dance away from my personal attrition, but the pattern. At first, the CNI's obsession was local. Me, my body, my immediate surroundings. Then we forced it to expand, to search farther afield for attractors when we denied it the easy ones. It fell back to my mind, then to my suit, then to the station. What happens when we keep dodging? When every possible configuration in which I die cleanly and individually gets pruned? Where does all that probability pressure go? Maybe the basin widens. Maybe the only way to satisfy the equations, once my personal death is sufficiently unlikely, is for something larger to break instead. The station, the mission, the planet. I am, after all, just one observer in a universe full of them. If the system can't find its local minimum around me, maybe it finds a global one somewhere else. The last frame I let play, all the way to its end, didn't show any bodies at all. It showed the CNI core tumbling through deep space, long after Hohmann, after me, after everyone I know are dust. It spun slowly in the dark, its white casing scuffed, its thrusters long since dead. No overlay, no timestamp. In the reflection of its cracked sensor dome, for just a moment, I thought I saw my own face. Older, lined, smiling. That's impossible, of course. There's no reason my image should be embedded in a piece of drifting junk centuries from now. Unless the camera that first showed me my own death wasn't the beginning of this story. Unless it was the end. Maybe, in some future I can't yet imagine, I live long enough to ride the tail of my own probability wave all the way to the point where the CNI is just another relic in the dark. Maybe I become the one who points some new, stranger instrument backward, letting some younger, more terrified version of me see what he has to escape. Maybe this whole mess is a closed loop of self-sabotage and self-rescue, wrapped around time like a tether around a hull. I don't know. I only know this. Tonight, when I close my eyes, I will see another frame. Maybe it will show me dead. Maybe it will show the station in pieces. Maybe it will show nothing at all. And when I open my eyes, I will have to choose how much I let that picture matter. The universe is bigger than any one snapshot. Negative space isn't just what's missing. It's everything that might still be drawn. So I get up. I float through the sleeping station. I check pressure seals, thermal tolerances, the little, boring things that keep air inside and cold outside. Somewhere in the loops of code running under my skin, algorithms whisper about possibilities. Somewhere in the deep, blind math of spacetime, attractors shift. Somewhere, very far away and maybe a long time from now, a dead machine turns slowly in the dark, carrying a faded echo of my face across a universe that has already forgotten my name. I don't know whether I will die in a decompression chamber, or a corridor, or a void with no walls. I only know that, for now, I am still here. And every second I stay here, the picture has to change.